All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm here with a very special guest. I am here with my friend Cassie Damer. Almost said the wrong last name.
You got it.
Oh man, Damer. Whew.
Mhm.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Here's the thing for all you listening. I always like make sure I have the name down, and then I just had like a mental lapse and I almost messed up. So thank you for bearing with me. But Cassie, after that fumble, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How about you? How about you?
Good. Glad to hear it. I'm
Mhm.
doing well. Thanks for asking for being on the
Mhm.
podcast.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Glad to be
So,
here.
yeah, I'm glad to have you. So, for those of you listening back home, Cassie is someone that I actually met back in college. So, a fellow CMU Chippewa, fire up chips.
Fire up.
She is fire up. She is a business owner and entrepreneur. Really great on social media, just building a community and really finding kind of her niche in business, which has been really cool for me to see since first meeting her years ago. So I'm excited to talk to her about her business and just what she's been up to and all the cool passion she has. So that's a little bit about Cassie. But do you mind kind of telling the listeners about your background, who you are, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Zach said, I did go to Central. I went there for undergrad and for grad school. And so my background is in conservation biology. So I still do that. I'm an environmental scientist still today. So I do have a little bit of that along with owning a business as well that's online. And it's called From Cover to Covers. So it's basically a romance shop that covers everything from self love to romance books, lingerie, and bedroom accessories, and all that entails with romance. So yeah.
So, uh, first of all, I don't think I knew that you went to grad school at CMU, but so did
Yeah,
undergrad and grad school there. So double fire up.
I know.
That's
Gotta keep it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you said environmental biology is what you studied for both
Mhm.
degrees. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Did
what
both of
led you?
those. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say what led you to environmental biology?
So I've always so when I first started CMU, I wanted to be a vet.
Okay.
And of course, throughout all things, no one really goes into what they wanted to go originally freshman year of college, right?
Right.
Like everyone changes throughout. So I met some of my advisors and I kind of got more into the science field and I knew I just loved environmental and natural resources and kind of just helping protect the planet a little bit more. And that's kind of where my path redirected me. So I went into some environmental research, doing conservation research, and then that led into my master's as well because I did conservation genetics, working with painted turtles, and yeah, and then now I'm an environmental scientist here in Tennessee, and we test like gases and like volatile gases, so pollutants in like waters and soils. So kind
Okay.
of always just had, yeah, I always just had a little passion for the environment and making sure we have a planet to live on. That's good.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel people are like, "Oh, why is the, environment important?" Or, why do we need to
Mhm.
do these little things? But I think you just, put it
Right.
very succinctly, like it's the planet that we live on, and I
Right.
think we all hope to live, a long and fulfilling life, and maybe we want to have kids and everything. So it's like we should take, a care and attention to the environment because we need it to survive.
Literally, yeah. I know everyone tries to make the environment and climate change like a political issue,
Hmm.
and it's like, no, it's just a humans issue. We all live here. We're all hopefully going to live here for a few more decades. So
Right.
we just want to make sure we have a place to live on that's sustainable and good for us. I think.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm sure you might not have like an exact answer to this, but like in your
Mhm.
opinions or just like through your professional experience or educational experiences, like is there something, is there like a clear reason or do you have any thoughts on why like people just sometimes don't care about the environment or think it's like not that big of a deal?
Ooh, yeah. I think humans specifically, and especially some more than others, are just very egotistical. They
Hmm.
just think they can't really think outside of themselves. really, so they can't even, fathom maybe their like their grandkids or their future generations, or even just like their neighbor next door. They're just very more, what's happening in my world? How is this
Mhm.
going to affect me? So there's very egotistical, and especially with animals, like a lot of people just think animals are kind of below them, which is just very egotistical as well. And of course, the main one is capitalism.
Yeah.
Everyone likes money, and so unfortunately, the environment kind of falls to the wayside. It costs more money, or if it can make more money doing something that's not environmentally friendly.
Right.
If that makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
definitely makes sense. I think those are all good reasons,
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess from my limited experience, it sounds kind of like that egotistical approach is what I've heard a lot of people are like,
Mhm.
"Oh, like, it doesn't impact me," or like,
Right.
"I'm not directly impacted by it," or, "It's more inconvenient for me to recycle than just to throw things out," for
Mhm.
example. So I think it's really, yeah, like you said, humans kind of have a hard time seeing things outside of what is directly, like, involved with themselves.
Correct. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
one of the main issues
Yeah.
in a lot of things.
So, I know, like, myself and probably a lot of people listening aren't environmental scientists, so,
Mhm.
without having
Okay.
all of the training and the education that, you have yourself, like, is there anything that's, like, simple or basic that kind of like the everyday person can do to kind of help promote, like, a healthy and long living environment for us?
Ooh, yeah. So some simple basic things is literally picking up trash. Like don't litter.
Okay.
Just simple basic things like that. Like when I take my dog for walks, I usually am picking up any trash I see on our little walk. It might just be a few little things, but that just helps out the environment and making sure the animals around us aren't getting into that trash or anything like that. Also, if you do have a dog, speaking of dogs, picking up dog poop rather than just leaving it on the ground also helps with the waterways and systems like that. And even just, you know, sharing more about the environment, maybe doing a quick Google search, or just now and then maybe don't eat meat for a meal, that helps the environment. So just little simple things, recycle, pick up trash, maybe don't eat as much meat. Those
Okay.
kind of, yeah, some basics right there.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So, pretty much everything that you said, like I've heard some sort of kind of like, iteration of, yeah, this is a good way to kind of help out the environment and everything. But I'm actually not too familiar with the meat part. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming as you said that, I'm thinking of like because meat comes from animals, so
Mhm.
by kind of limiting that, we're, you know, kind of, I guess, saving animals, if that makes sense. Is that the right logic, or am I like incorrect in the thoughts?
I mean, in like one of the bases, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But in the more grander scheme of things,
Yeah.
so I used to be vegan for like 4 or 5 years back in the
Okay.
day. And but so kind of the main things that kind of help with not eating as much meat.
Yeah.
So of course saving animals and things like that, but also the way Americans kind of consume meat. We do consume a lot of meat, and
Mhm.
we do have a large population. So there's also a lot of resources that go into raising those animals, such as
Mm.
land resources, water resources, food resources, that kind of go all into those things that we kind of don't think about, especially water specifically, especially in the west of America that has going through droughts and things like that. A
Right.
lot of the water supply is used either to help with, water, like watering. I don't want to say watering, but helping the animals get fed and watered, and
Okay.
also for their own like their own food, corn and stuff like that.
Okay. Cool. Well,
Hmm.
that's really helpful to know because, yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
it's something that hadn't even thought of or wasn't really familiar with. But
Hmm.
to kind of see
Yeah.
how, I think that's a good example of how like something that maybe we take for granted or we don't think too much about the
Hmm.
process, how
Right.
much it actually impacts the environment that we live in.
Right. It kind of just it shows up in the grocery store somehow, some
Right.
way. We don't think about
Exactly.
how it got there. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
that's, like, such a funny kinda concept about being, in this day and age where, kind of things
Mhm.
are pretty instant gratification, so it's like you said, you can go to the store and buy all these products, these foods, but we don't really think
Mhm.
about where they came from or how we got them or where how they got to
Right.
the store. We just think, "Oh, hamburgers. I guess I'm having a burger
Right.
tonight."
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly. Even because I go to the farmers market around here pretty often,
Yeah.
but the broccoli and cauliflower, or even just tons of vegetables that they have at farmers market, are completely different from what you see in a grocery store. And a lot of people kind of get put off by that a little bit, but it's just no, it's just one way that it's grown locally and not mass produced as you would see in a grocery store. It's very
Okay.
interesting how we just don't know, because if you're not a farmer, why would you know? Why would you know?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, even you saying that, like, I hadn't thought of that or even knew that was a
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It is.
Yeah, used to be I used to go down that rabbit hole a lot, especially in college and grad school,
Yeah,
because it's just a whole plethora of things they kind of don't think about.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
So kind of like branching off that, like,
Mhm.
maybe we're not thinking about all these things or the sources of things or, maybe we want to be
Mhm.
more informed. And I know you mentioned, even just doing like a quick Google search to kind of learn more about the environment or just to do some
Mhm.
some self-research on the things that we've talked about and such is a good way to kind of learn more. Now, my question with that is like Google, super awesome, powerful tool to
Yeah.
use, but maybe not always the most sources will pop up. Do you have any like
Mhm. Mhm.
recommendations or suggestions on like reputable places to get our information, or is it really just kind of just search for whatever you're looking for and then do your due diligence, your homework, and making sure it's credible and
Yeah.
everything?
Yeah. Of course, always do due diligence wherever you're searching for things.
Yes.
Big supporter of that.
Yeah.
But kind of some good ones are just some, like the Sierra Club is a good environmental nonprofit that has a lot of different resources and a lot of different environmental topics that they kind of go
Hmm.
into, and they have different departments for each one. So that's a good one to go into. The Nature Conservancy is also just a good broad general terms of things. And even I mean, I haven't been on there in a while, but when I used to do a lot of research, just like the on the governmental EPA and like FDA will give you the statistics that you need in order to make whatever conclusion that you want to come across, or make your own decision across that. So those are kind of the main ones that
Okay.
I go with. Hmm.
Perfect. And I don't know if I hope this question makes sense. It might
Hmm.
maybe it doesn't, or maybe it might be a silly question to ask, but like you've of course, lived in Michigan,
Okay.
going to Central Michigan University, and but you
Yeah.
said you're in Tennessee.
Yes.
So living in two different states like that is kind of
Hmm.
like they're different, I guess, priorities when it comes to government, or is it kind of like the environment is the environment, so, like, what you could do in Michigan to help out, like, your, surroundings would be the same in Tennessee, or does it kind of depend on, like, geographical regions or states? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah. So every state, especially living now in two different states, has their own, I guess, views or programs that they do in order to help the environment. For
Mhm.
example, and luckily, like Michigan obviously has the Great Lakes. So they're
Right.
super into Great Lakes, protecting the Great Lakes. And luckily, I'm also in another state that has like the mountains and forests and things like that with Tennessee. So they're also very protective of those. But they also do have some differences. For example, in my county right now, we don't have recycling, because
Okay.
when I where I used to live, and even at Central, they had like the recycling bins and things like that.
Mhm.
Or you just put your recycling out at the end of the driveway, and someone come around on trash day to pick it up. But here you have to pay extra for it. So obviously, not a lot of people are going to do that. They have to pay like $200 extra a year.
Yeah.
And even having like returnables in Michigan where you get 10 cents for each can, and that helps recycling. Whereas here, Nah, that's like that's not even a thing.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, it's kind of different. Each day is a little bit different. Better or worse, who's to say? But it's more
Right.
convenient in Michigan. Mhm.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I know just from, like, taking the returnables in the past, like, I know that sometimes, like, if you look at the can, it says, like, where you can what states and stuff, but I never really, I guess, put 2 and 2
Mhm.
together or even realize that Tennessee, specifically, there is no returns on that, and,
Mm-mm.
even I think you brought up a good point of, like, I've lived in Michigan all my life, so, like,
Yeah.
recycling has been kind of just something I guess I would say I've taken for granted or just I've grown so
Mhm.
accustomed to do, but to realize that that could sometimes be, a barrier of entry for some folks, pay to have that service, like, that's crazy to me.
Right. Isn't it weird? It's so
Yeah,
weird. Because you would think it'd just be a part of the county services of what it does, but
right.
at least my specific county doesn't. I know, I think Davidson, which is county right next to me, which is where Nashville is they do have it
Okay.
sometimes, but not in every neighborhood. So it's
Yeah,
just kind of very interesting how those limitations are, because it's also something I took for granted while living in Michigan. I could
right.
easily just have a recycling bin, and that's just normal and what happens. But here it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, it is an extra barrier. And if you don't care about the environment, or if it's just not in your means, like you're not gonna do it. So it's just more.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's
Yeah.
tough because it's
Mhm.
like we've talked about, the environment's so important, but it's almost
Mhm.
like you're just making more barriers to do something that is important,
Mhm.
and, if maybe you don't have the financial means or maybe you're, "Oh, if it was free, I would do it, but since I have to pay, like, there's no point." It's kind of like it just I feel like it doesn't let us improve the environment and make the positive strides that
Right.
we kinda need to make.
Right. Exactly. I know.
Wow.
You would think it'd just be all encompassing, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's interesting. So, I mean, I'm gonna ask this question, and we don't have to
Yeah.
dive super into the weeds of it, and, if you don't wanna answer it, that's totally cool too. Um, you kinda mentioned earlier how,
Mm.
it seems like a lot of people tend to take the environment or climate change and really make it a political topic, and again, like, we don't have
Mhm.
to get into super political talk here, but, like, I've just never understood that, and I feel like you
Mhm.
kinda articulated that as well, so I guess, like, do you have any thoughts on why it always has to seem to go into a political direction?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I I don't understand the whole. I don't know where it came about. I don't know why it came about. The
Mhm.
whole environmental being a political thing, or even just having like human rights, gay rights,
Yeah.
trans rights being a political thing too, because that's just literally human rights.
Right.
Um, so it's just very strange to me and something that I can't really wrap my head around sometimes because I don't know when it became a Republican or Democratic thing. It
Right.
should just be everyone should kind of support it because we're all in the same boat. We're all on
Yeah.
the same planet. We're all living here. And I don't know why it came across. And it's just very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird and very every time, especially if I'm saying an environmental scientist or that I believe in climate change or that especially with my business and being with sexual wellness, so promoting gay rights, women's rights, human rights. It's like, oh, why are you getting political? It's like, well, it's not a political stance.
Right,
It's
right.
more everyone should have access to this and everyone should be able to live on an earth that has available resources to survive. Like I just seems basic to me, but for other people not so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, like, these are serious things, so I don't want it to seem like I'm making light of anything, but it's almost, like,
No.
comical to hear you say that in the sense of, like, it's so basic, like,
Mhm.
it's just rights, it's, like, basic human rights, but
Mhm.
why does it have to be so,
Yeah.
like, complex, or why do people have to, you
Right.
know make a big deal out of these things. And I mean, sure, if
Right.
maybe you might personally not, I don't know, agree with something or not feel a certain way towards one of these topics, but that doesn't mean that you have to, kind of say, okay, this is
Mhm.
wrong, or like, just because I, don't care about recycling, I think that anyone that wants to recycle is like a bad person, or they have this political view or that. I don't get why
Right.
we can't just understand that, like, you know, people, if you're a person, you should inherently have
Mhm.
whatever rights, that you want to have.
Correct.
And, we all
True.
live in this environment. So it's not necessarily
Mhm.
like fair for me to go pollute it and ruin it for my neighbors because we all have to share it. It's kind of like having
Mhm.
roommates.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's literally just having roommates, but on
Yeah,
a larger scale.
exactly. And it's
Mhm.
just like that kind of almost like common courtesy and just like respect for others, and like,
Yeah.
I don't understand why that's such a hard topic for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah. I think I think that's a really good point where it says just respect for other people. Because
Yeah,
other people can have different opinions. Um, but we can all live all together harmoniously as long as we all agree that everyone has these rights to
exactly.
live a happy life.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just being a common, and I think that goes to egotistical things. Just sometimes humans and some people are just very egotistical and they can't think outside of their box
right,
per se,
right.
or see how their actions are influencing other people and harming other people.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
that's just the frustrating part.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, unfortunately, it's so
Yeah,
it's just
but
yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I don't know. I know we're around the same age and everything, so I think,
Mhm.
when we were in college, and people in college now are just, around your 20s, and so I
Yeah.
think we're becoming a more, I guess, accepting and just like open, just society and world. So I think that we're
Mhm.
moving in the right direction of just kind of like, being accepting of everyone and everyone's rights, and being respectful and courteous. And if we maybe disagree, I think our generation and the other generations after us are more open to hearing out other sides, and maybe saying, okay, like, I respect you, I hear what you say, but I still don't agree, but that's okay. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Right. It's like I'm not gonna stop you from doing your thing, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I think luckily, yeah, luckily we are still on the younger side, but we're hopefully getting more and more traction as
Hmm.
the years go on. So hopefully that becomes more of a norm
Right.
rather than a kind of crazy thing.
Exactly.
uh, so hopefully more and more people, as we kind of get into the more adulting phases of things as we get older,
Right.
will hopefully work on being just more open with each other and
Yeah.
more accepting of each other. Because it's
Yeah.
really just things you learn in preschool. It's just,
Exactly.
hey, let's all be nice to each other.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great
Hopefully.
point. It's like basic things that we learn as kids, and then it's like we learn these things,
Mm-hmm.
and then we start to grow up, and then we deviate from them, and we
Yeah.
forget all these like childhood lessons that are called life lessons for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're literally things you learn when you're like 5 years old,
Hmm.
but you should definitely still continue on even when you're 65, 75. Continue
Right.
on your whole life to
Yeah,
make the world kind of a better place.
I totally agree.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
with everything that you're doing, with your job as an environmental scientist, and just living your life and enjoying your life and everything like that,
Mhm.
I could imagine you're probably a pretty busy person. But then on top of that, you add having an online business, and being a business owner and everything. How did that journey start for you, and like what led you to wanting to have your own business?
Yeah. Um, so that journey started right after I graduated undergrad,
Hmm.
and I knew I had a few months in between undergrad and grad school.
Okay.
So I was like, let me see what I could do with a little like side business because I didn't for sure want a real job yet
Yeah.
because I knew I had to go to grad school. So it's like, let me do a little something. And so originally started with Pure Romance. So I
Hmm.
became a part of Pure Romance. And I remember going to one of my old college roommates parties, and I met the consultant there, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I fell in love with the whole um, embracing sexual wellness, creating like a nice environment where people can feel comfortable to talk about anything, and also just the products were amazing. And I was like, I could do this and kind of bring this to other people. So that kind of with Pure Romance, I became like certified as sexual wellness educator, and I kind of stepped into that field more and more. And then so that was like 5 years ago.
Right.
And then this year, I decided because along with the pandemic, I also became really back to my roots of being a reader and like bookworm. And so I really got into romance books. And then so I was like, you know what? These both go hand in hand. Teaching sexual wellness is like reading romance books go really hand in hand with each other. And I was like, let's converge these two worlds. And that's where From Covers to Covers started. So that's when I decided to do my full business and still create the nice open space where people can feel comfortable talking about things. Like one of my taglines is to like explore your curiosities.
Mm.
We all have curiosities kind of about the world, especially in the sexual wellness world, in the romance world, in dating, and just finding all these different types of things. And so I think they go hand in hand really, really nicely because someone could read a book and maybe they might discover something new about their relationship or themselves, and they can also bring that over into the sexual wellness world and kind of explore that into
Yeah.
their own real life. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I'm glad that you've kind of been on this
Mm-hmm.
journey where you had that first experience where you were, involved with pure romance and taking those skills and knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
experience, and then creating your own business and doing your own thing with it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really cool to have this conversation because I feel like just the idea of sexual wellness, it's something that like, even someone listening to this is probably like, "Oh, wait, why are we talking about that?" Or, like, they maybe
Right.
feel a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and I think we're almost, like, trained or conditioned to think, like, "Oh, we shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
talk about this or this is uncomfortable," but I think it's super important, and I'm sure you would agree because that's what
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
business and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially when I first got into this field, a lot of people they're either like, oh my god, that's so exciting, and they're like, ooh, and they kind of like just turn away and they
Yeah.
change the topic, and it's like we're definitely very conditioned as a society. I think, especially America specifically, like all our media is super sexualized, except we're
Mhm.
super scared to talk about sexual wellness or like actual sex or anything like that. It's
Right.
very stigmatized. It's very almost like a taboo subject
Yeah.
sometimes. And so that's also one of the main reasons why I wanted to do my own business is to make it less taboo, make it more informative, and yeah, just make sure everyone feels comfortable in their own body, their own sexuality, and with themselves.
Yeah. I think that's so important because I think, like, kind of like you said, with it being almost a taboo topic or just something that
Mm-hmm.
isn't talked about, or it's kind of like if you want to talk about it or if you want to explore, like it's almost like you should be ashamed of those feelings or you shouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
that or that's weird or that's, too much. But it's like I feel like
Right.
if you don't have like a healthy, open, safe community, it's like that's where it can just be really tough on an individual to understand or
Mm-hmm.
to really figure out, their own sexual wellness without having
Mm-hmm.
that like safe space to do so.
Correct. I think it's really, really hard if you don't know. It's kind of like people don't know if they're part of the club or if they're not part of the club, and they try to figure out which of their friends are part of the club that want to talk about it and which friends
Mhm.
don't want to talk about it. It's very, it's just a very weird world to navigate. But luckily, when I have like sexual wellness educator in my Instagram bio, or when my friends find out that that's a thing that I do, then they become completely more open to me about it. Like they'll seek me out, like random strangers, if they find out that's what I do. They kind of like seek me out and they ask me all these questions, and I love that personally, and I would love to create that just more open to everyone, so that everyone can feel safe in their own community to talk about whatever they need to.
Yeah, Definitely, and
Mhm.
I know that you said kind of like when you first got into the sexual education, sexual wellness education kind of space and everything, kind of like we were talking about, maybe some people are like, "Oh, like, that's cool," and then some were like, "Oh,
Mm.
okay," and, like, change the topic and
Yep.
everything. And since you've been kind of in this role and now having your own business for quite a while now, do you
Mhm.
still feel like if you talk to someone or, maybe someone from CMU that we went to school with or something, do you feel like there
Mhm.
is that kind of, like, judgment or like, "Oh, that's interesting," or do you think a lot of the reception you've been getting has been very positive and like, "Oh, that's really cool," or "That's different, I wanna learn more about it."
Mhm. So, so far in my journey, I would say majority of it is positive.
Good.
Majority of people are like trying to find kind of that space or trying to find that someone to talk about these topics to or even ask questions to because I mean, there's no really a big community about it or
Right.
they're never taught about it in high school or in classes or anything, so it's hard to find information about it.
Mhm.
Every now and then I'll get like a little judgment or
Sure.
like when I used to do a lot of vendors events, people would even just like skip through the table and look at me weird. Uh, but those are kind of my favorite kind of people. I'm like, okay, one day
Yeah.
you'll be back. Like, or if they want to open up a discussion about it, I love to open up a discussion about it, even if they feel super uncomfortable. I'd like to dig deeper why they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
But luckily, majority of it has been positive because
that's really good.
most of the time people are just looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome,
Mhm.
and, Cassie, when you first kind of got started and everything, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, for you, was it something where
Mhm.
you were like, "Oh, it's kind of going out of my comfort zone a little bit, but I'm curious, I'm interested, I wanna see what this is
Mhm.
about," or were you, I guess, maybe one of those, like, more open where you're like, "Oh, this is really cool, I'm super excited, I'm ready to learn about it, I wanna have these conversations," like, was there any, I guess, hesitation or worry or
Mhm.
anything on your end when you were kind of getting started in the field, or
Yeah. So personally, I've always been pretty open about everything, especially with my friend group and things like that. But
Okay.
I was a little hesitant about opening it up to the public
Sure.
for everyone to know, like, this is what I do. Because sometimes you can put like a target on your back. Like,
Yeah.
some people may judge you, or like friends and family and coworkers. I'm like, ooh, are they
Mhm.
gonna like judge me? Are they gonna do things? But when I first started, I was like, I'm super excited about this. And I think it's something that should be shared with other people. So I think my enthusiasm really got out there more so. And so people were more on board with it or slowly came on board with it once they knew more background of why I was doing it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, little hesitation. I think little hesitation also just being out there on social media, being
Sure.
out there just talking to random strangers about things. And that was a little more hesitant because I'm more introverted in that regard. So,
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like anything, like trying something new or putting yourself out there, that can be tough and intimidating and
hmm
can be a little, anxiety inducing, but I'm glad that you got, good reception and people were really open to kind of hearing about and everything. Because I think it's really cool and it's really important. And I mean, in my personal life experiences, like,
yeah,
you are the first person that I've known
yeah,
personally and that I'm connecting with that's a sexual wellness educator, and I think
hmm
that's cool. I would love to, say that, you know, these kind of conversations or this kind of education is, like you said, something that maybe we do learn, in high school or in college or just something because, again, it's very important and it's like a normal aspect
yeah,
of life and being a human being, but we seem to
yeah,
kind of make it seem like it's some very off limits, taboo topic.
right, right, exactly. Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks for saying that.
Of course.
Um, yeah, it's not something that's really talked about or really, like, I don't find a lot of others unless I know
Mhm.
specifically that's what they do and that's how we connected originally. But I think it is. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it is like just something super important because it's just basic life, and that's where my biology kind of comes into it as well. It's like this is all basic life things.
Mhm.
Everyone either does it or have the parts, and we all do it. We just
Right.
don't talk about it as openly.
Right.
And I mean, we see it all the time in movies and TV shows, so might as well talk about it in real life as well.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that, like, if we don't talk about it or,
Mm-hmm.
if we just kind of maybe if we see it in movies or something or TV and then it just kinda gets brushed to the side or something, like, we don't like, again, that could just be more harmful or, like, it would be
Right.
better to just have those conversations to educate and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I'm not saying, like, these are conversations to have with, you know, 3-year-old kids or anything, but you know what I mean? Like, when get
Mm-hmm.
to that age where, you're maturing and going through puberty and stuff like that, I think, like, the lack of
Yeah.
education there or just, like, the the quickness that we have to dismiss the topic, I think that honestly probably does more harm than good,
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
creates maybe confusion or unreal expectations or just I mean, even
Mm-hmm.
things with maybe, like, as far as not even understanding, things like consent or things, that are
Right.
actual, what this all is about or what sexual wellness is or how to, interact with people appropriately and boundaries and stuff like that. So I think it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know why this isn't, covered more because I definitely think it should be. And just having this conversation, I'm realizing like, yeah, like this is a huge area that we should all kind of get better with.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100% agree. And I think because it literally like affects us throughout our whole entire life. And
Hmm.
there's this person on TikTok. I forgot who she was, but she's a mom, and she kind of does a lot of videos because she has kids from like 3 years old to 14,
Okay.
and she talks about how like with each age step, how she'll talk about sex, sexual wellness, consent, those things like that. Like for the 3-year old, it's more using the actual correct anatomical terms
Hmm.
for everything, and also teaching consent. 'Cause, I mean, you can teach consent at a very young age, like
Yes.
rather asking, "Hey, do you want a hug? Do you not want a hug?"
Hmm.
And that's I think really important, and that extends throughout the rest of your life, and then going into puberty, and then kind of extending the conversation a little bit more into like the birds and bees conversation, also like having protected sex, which I think is super, super important to teach kids about because I know a lot of schools and school systems do like the abstinence program and things like
Right.
that, but in reality, teenagers aren't really doing that.
Right. Right.
So it's more important to teach them what's actually happening and give them all the facts first, so that way
Exactly.
when they're having sex and going out into the world and becoming an adult, they have all the correct information needed for that, rather than ending up with a mistake like an STI pregnancy or something like that that
Yeah.
could affect their life. Hmm.
Exactly. And I think that that's spot on kind of where I'm at. And I think the importance of it, it's like, why not educate and give people the knowledge and the information to make informed decisions. And I think it goes back to like what we were talking about, even with the environment. It's like it
Hmm.
it doesn't like you can do whatever you want to do, and I really don't have a right to say that's right, that's wrong, whatever. Like you can do it
Right.
what's best for you, but I think like we should all have the education to make those decisions. And if you want to, you
Hmm.
know, practice safe sex, if you don't, if you want to, be abstinent, like whatever your preferences, that's totally okay. But I think like we not almost, we are doing a disservice by not
Hmm.
educating and not equipping people with the knowledge because it's like any decision that you're going to make, like you should have all the information and we shouldn't
Right.
deprive people of that.
Correct. Correct. Because I feel like
Yeah.
there's also just a lot of myths out there
Mhm.
that people hear on the internet and things like that, and then that are actually like not true at all. Like, oh,
Right.
you can't get pregnant while having sex in a hot tub. It's like, no, that doesn't correlate at all.
Right.
And so, like, especially if you're younger, if you don't know, if you never had the education for it, how are you gonna know? You
Right.
know?
Exactly. So I know that a little while ago you were saying that like, it's unless maybe you connected with someone because they are also like a sexual wellness educator,
Hmm.
it's it might not be too known someone does have that background or who's in that community, I guess. Like, so I'm just curious,
Hmm.
is like the sexual wellness educator community, is that like a pretty large community or is it kind of a bit of a smaller one? Do you have any kind of insight on
It's
that?
yeah. So it's in the grand scheme of things, based on other communities, I guess it is a little bit smaller one, but there's still luckily more people being added to that group, more people finding out about different areas and or different educators. Um, Luckily with podcasts like this, or like many others, like there's many other podcasts that are just like sexual wellness podcast, or maybe
Yeah.
they talk about dating and they have like other people's or people like sex therapists, counselors, other sex educators, and they have like guest appearances on other podcasts, and that's luckily how it kind of gets more spread and like
Hmm.
information gets more spread out in the world.
Yeah.
So it's small, but it's getting bigger. And luckily, there's like a conference once a year too that people can go to for that. So luckily, it's not super small, but it still can be always grow.
It's growing. Yeah. And
Hmm.
that this is kind of like the answer that I anticipated you saying. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, like I will say unfortunately that it's kind of the sad reality of it that it is a bit of a small community, but I'm glad to hear that it's growing because I mean we've just talked about it for the last 20 minutes or so, like how important it is. And I think
Hmm.
it's like knowing that the community is small, it's like, darn, like I wish it was a larger community so we could have more of these conversations or we could,
Right.
just educate ourselves and educate others. But I love that it's growing. And, even with
Yeah.
with the podcast right now, I mean, like I will be the first to admit that like I have not had, a sexual wellness educator on
Yeah.
before. I never
Yep.
really envisioned having one on, not that I have
No.
anything
Yeah.
against that, but just like I didn't even realize
Hmm.
that that was really a thing. But to
Yeah.
me, it's like I, I'm very fortunate and grateful to have this platform to talk to people about things that they're passionate about and things that they're knowledgeable on and things that are important. And through these conversations, it helps me grow and hopefully helps
Hmm.
everyone that listens grow. So like I'm honestly honored to be able to talk to someone like yourself who is, an educator
Yeah.
and an expert in these kind of topics so we can have these conversations because, I think even, to kind of make a comparison, like mental health,
Hmm.
right? Like mental health is
Hmm.
something that, you know, I'm sure when you and I were both kids, like it's kind of brushed under the rug, it's not talked about, but now we're doing a better job talking about it, normalizing it, and understanding the importance of therapy and counseling and stuff. So it's like that all started because people talked about mental health and had conversations. So
Right.
now it's kind of like I feel like our next thing is like to talk about sexual wellness and to be open about these things so we can
Hmm.
again normalize these conversations and make sure that everyone feels heard and seen with their own experiences.
Yeah. Absolutely. Retweet on that. um, yeah, that's why I think kind of going a little on topic, but off
Yeah.
topic, but that's why I think podcasts or even like TikTok and all these so many different platforms that you talk
Hmm.
about is so cool and amazing
Yeah.
because you could just have this like conversation podcast where you just have tons of different people and people who are listening can learn about a new topic that they have never even thought about or not in the realm of things.
Right.
Like I listen to so many podcasts, like history podcasts, sexual health podcasts, just random comedians that talk to each other, and then
Yeah.
I learned so many things just from that alone, which is wild.
It
Absolutely.
is. It is
Hmm.
pretty cool how like we have so much, knowledge and information at our fingertips and it's just like to just give it a try and to learn new things or to seek out,
Hmm.
some topics that you're a little unsure of or step out of your comfort zone to learn something new. So I'm all on board with
Yeah.
kind of, podcast, TikTok, other forms of, social media that we can learn, about new things and learn other people's perspectives and stuff. So I
Hmm.
totally agree with that. And, on the topic of kind of, social media and everything and,
Yeah.
something that I've always really respected and appreciated about you is from what I've seen following your journey since kind of started with the businesses is that you've done a great job
Mhm.
building a community and engaging with people and kind of creating this, digital safe place for people to talk and share, experiences or thoughts or just, have conversations. So like how
Mhm.
has building that community been for you? Or like, is it something that you ever did you envision having like the community that you have now when you first started in this endeavor?
No. Um, I thought, oh man, yeah, it is kind of crazy just the growth and the journey of it
Yeah.
alone. Because when I first initially started, like I was just a little introvert, barely on social media, uh, barely making a lot of conversation with random strangers that I never met in real life.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a learning curve for sure. So I kind of just kept on trying different things. And like I have a private Facebook group for this community and for people to feel comfortable talking about different topics. And it's kind of crazy how much it's kind of grown because I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe 50 people will be there, maybe 100 people. And it's like, it's still for me on the smallest size compared to other people, but I
Sure.
still love it. I mean, I have 500 girls in my group, and just having that alone and kind of having that space. And then I have just people and followers on Facebook or Instagram and like TikTok, and it's just very crazy to see just how much the growth has happened over time
Yeah.
and how comfortable I am with it now. And yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I never would have expected it ever.
Yeah.
Not, not once. If you would have told me like 10 years ago when I was brand speaking right out of high school, I would have been like, no, that's crazy.
Right.
Like, that's not what I'm going to do. What are you talking about? But I kind of love it. Yeah. I love
Yeah.
creating that space for people to get information, feel comfortable, and kind of explore. Hmm.
That is so cool to hear. I love hearing things like that when it's like, I didn't
Yeah.
expect it to be anything like this, but here it is. And like, here's the growth that I've seen in myself and, in this
Hmm.
endeavor and everything. It's so cool to hear that. And I mean, I know you said like, maybe in the grand scheme of things, like your community and everything is maybe on the smaller side
Hmm.
compared to maybe others, but I think the cool thing
Right.
is like you don't have to compare yourself to others. I mean, you have your own community and you've built it up, and I have no doubt that you're going to continue to. And I think it's just
Hmm.
really cool to see. And again, just like from being connected with you, just to see kind of like that community that you've grown, and just like, just to see you, making these posts and just engaging and doing all these things. I'm like,
Hmm.
I've always admired that. I'm like, wow, like I wish I could just like make these Facebook posts or like make like
Yeah.
these stories and ask people questions about anything and just like get people to want to engage and have conversations about whatever the topic might be. I think that that's just a really
Yeah.
cool thing that you've been able to do, and it's so funny to hear you say like that you were, or even maybe still are, a little more on the introverted side, because it's like you would never guess that.
No. A lot of people are like, oh, interesting. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, like this is not, I wouldn't normally do this.
Right.
It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but now it's just, I could easily do it. And I'm very grateful for those skills I've learned because even my group of friends here in Nashville, we decided to do like a book club that we meet in person and we have an Instagram for it. And they're like, oh, yeah, you did the post. I was like, oh, me? Like, I'm a social media person?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, obviously. I'm like, it's wild to even think about. But it's like, oh, yeah, I guess that would be me.
I love it.
It's crazy. Hmm.
That's awesome. So, through our conversation, Cassie, I know that like you have, kind of, I would say where you're at right now, like those dual passions between, your job as an environmental scientist and just your passion for the environment in general, and then also just kind of like the passion for social media and business and sexual wellness and your own business that you've started and everything. So, with you doing both of those, is that kind of like, are you like super happy and you want to do both of them, or do you think like one of them is going to be more so of like the focus in the future, or would you love to have your business be the only thing you're doing someday, I guess, like, what are your thoughts or
Mhm.
goals surrounding the things that you're doing right now?
Yeah, good question. Um, so my main my main goal would be to focus more on my business
Okay.
and to focus more on that front. Like I do love the environment, but I also love working for myself.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Uh, and so also with my goal with growing my business is one, creating that community, helping others feel comfortable with their sexuality and maybe spark the joy of reading again for them, but also to make enough profit to help like advocate for other things, for the environment, human rights and things like that. So that way I could still do all my passions
Hmm.
in one area, but I'll be able to fund and kind of like put more money towards like topics that need more help. I guess
Yeah,
that makes sense. That'd
it
be my
does.
main goal. Mhm.
I love that. I mean,
Mhm.
it just, I don't know, just having this conversation with you right now, and this, to
Mhm.
anyone listening, this is unscripted. Like, we didn't talk beforehand what we're going to
Oh yeah.
talk about or anything like that. Like, this whole podcast, as if you've been listening since the start, it's always been unedited, organic, unscripted. So I didn't know how this conversation would go, but I just
Yeah.
feel so empowered from talking to you about just different topics that we talked about, whether that's just the human rights conversation that we've had, or just
Mhm.
even things that are personally important to me, just
Right.
issues or topics. And I just feel so, I just feel lighter after having this conversation because I know that there's people like yourself in this world who are advocating for the things that they believe in, and that, it's like you said, these topics and these different causes need more attention or need maybe some more funding or just need more conversation surrounding them. So it
Mhm.
makes me
Yeah.
feel so just hopeful that we will start having these conversations. We will start advocating stronger for these causes because
Mhm.
someone needs to. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that there are people in the world who truly care enough to be advocates. So I love what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad
Yeah.
it did make you feel better.
Yeah.
It's always yeah, always been one of my goals is to help make the world a little bit a better place, one step at a time, kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
I think through everything that you're doing a tremendous job of making the world a better place, both, I guess, like physically in terms of the environment,
Mhm.
but then, of course, just what you
Mhm.
advocate for and what you represent in your own business and just
Yeah.
the education that you provide. I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and you've surely impacted me in this conversation, and to for everyone listening, I think they'll walk away from this conversation having grown, having learned something, having their curiosity piqued a little bit, or just kind of, focusing on more things that maybe they hadn't thought about, or just looking at things a little differently. So I think you're doing a great job, and I definitely am excited to see what you continue to do in all those fronts.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it a
Of
lot.
course. Of course. So, Cassie, to everyone that's been, listening along to us, if they want to check out like your socials or get, involved with your community or check out your store,
Yeah.
your business, what's like the best ways to get in contact with you or to check out what you're up to?
Yeah. So Instagram's always a good one. Literally, my handles are the same from Instagram to TikTok to Facebook. It's just Cassie.Damer.
Okay.
And so my first and last name. And then for my business, it's just from cover to covers. And that is also Instagram and TikTok and also a website for that one
Okay.
as well. And then also on my website, I mean, it has everything on there. Whether if you want to get in the Facebook group, any of the book clubs, any of the Instagram, Facebook, wherever, reach out. I'm here for you. If anyone has any questions that came up during this podcast, please feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for sharing where everyone can connect with you and check out everything you're doing in your business. I will put everything that Cassie just mentioned in the description of the episode. So anyone that's listening, just go to the description, check out the links, the social medias, the website, all that stuff. It'll be right there, nice and conveniently for you. Um, but I definitely encourage you to check out what Cassie's doing. Like she said, if you have any questions or if things popped up or you're just curious or you want to kind of, learn more about what she does and what her business entails, that, definitely reach out. I think she's an awesome person to connect with and an awesome person that, can help you kind of on your own journey or learn in the field of sexual wellness.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Well, Cassie, as we wrap things up tonight, do you have any final thoughts, message, words that you want to share to give to any of the listeners tonight?
Um, one, thank you, Zach,
Yeah.
for offering this platform. It's absolutely amazing. You've been killing the game. I've seen you. Um, and yeah, hopefully everyone just kind of explore their own curiosity, feel comfortable in their own body, their own environment, and things like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. And of course,
Mhm.
I'm honored to have you on the podcast and to be able to share my platform with you and to grow myself and learn from this conversation and hopefully to positively impact others. So it's an absolute honor. And thank you for the kind words and the support with the podcast. But I think that's a great way to kind of sum up, what the whole kind of topic of our conversation has been about kind of exploring your
Mhm.
curiosities and just, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, and I think that
Yeah.
applies to anything in life, and
Oh,
educate yourself as much as you can, again, whether that's going back to the environmental topics that we talked about or with sexual wellness, just get educated, educate others, and um,
yeah.
both are topics that are just involving human rights, so be kind to others
Yeah.
and be accepting and just do what makes you
Love it.
happy.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Cassie. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.